Hey everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, what we will do, in last video, we have taken a Node.js based API application along with the React frontend and we deployed it to Azure App Service. The way we have deployed in last video is we use Visual Studio Code extension and then we selected our API and we selected our React application and we deployed these two things to two separate app service and then we use the API URL in the React application. But what we are going to do in this video is Azure App Service has a lot of ways to get things deployed, and one of the way is they support Docker containers. So what we can do, we can just build our application as a Docker container, and then we can just ask Azure App Service to run that container, and then it will just spin up that container and it will run it. But what we are going to do, because in our case we have two separate applications. So we have one is API, another one is this React application, which is the front end. And what we are going to do, we are going to take both of these container and we are going to run in a single app service. And the way we do that is we have something called Docker Compose, and Docker Compose is a way we can run the multiple container at the same time. And that's exactly what we are going to do. So before we go into the Docker Compose and how we are going to deploy and everything, I just want to show like this is that front end application. And what I have done, I have created, it's the same application we used in the last video, and I just created one Docker file and we have, this is the simple Docker commands which will get this application, build this application, and then whatever the build content is, if you remember, it was whatever asset we build it, go into distribution folder. And we're going to take that and we're going to just put a very simple bare bone Nginx server and we're just going to copy everything to this particular path. And it's just a very simple static front end, and that's what we're going to run. Okay, coming to the API side of it. In API as well, we have a Docker file. And what we are doing over here, we are creating a folder, we are copying our packages, and we are doing npm install. And then we are copying rest of the files, and then we are exposing 3001. And even here as well, if you see in the React application, we are not exposing anything because by default Nginx will expose the port 80, and that's what we are going to use it to talk. Okay. Now, what I have done, I went. You can just do. So, for example, I'm this in the app React folder. Let me see where I am. Okay. Let me just go to cd to do app. Yeah. So what I can do, I can just do a simple, because we already have a Docker file over here. I can just do docker build dot, and I can tag it, and then it will just build this particular Docker image. I have already done that, and I'm just gonna run this. So if I do docker run, and then you see this is what this is the command gonna run to run this application. So what we are doing docker run, and because I said like Nginx is listening on port 80 and we want to expose 8080 for the external access, and then this is that image name and this is the tag. I can just simply run this particular Docker container and we'll see. And if I go to the Docker desktop, you will see in the containers, you should see like this particular application up and running. Okay, so I think, yeah, it is running. I can just click on this and go to this localhost, and you can see this to-do app is running. Again, we don't have any to-dos because the API we are not running. So this is how the simple thing is going on. But what we are going to do, because we have to deploy both API as well as this front-end React project as well, what we are going to use, we are going to do something called Docker Compose. And in Docker Compose, if you see, let me just close this. What we are going to do, we have this backend service. This is something in Docker Compose, you have to define services. And this is exactly what we are doing. We are doing backend service and we are doing this front end service. And backend, we are saying, hey, if you want to build, you just go to /API and you have a Docker file over there. And this is where the image name is gonna be. So if I do Docker Compose push, this is my personal Docker Hub account, and this image will be pushed to this, and this will be the tag. And this is where we are exposing that 3001 because this is what this particular API is gonna expose. And for the front end, we are doing everything same, and we are exposing the port 80. Okay, and we have a simple network so that this two container runs within the same network, and we are giving the driver type as a bridge. Okay, now what will happen if we take the Docker Compose and we deploy it to the app service? There is one problem when we will deploy this particular Docker Compose. It is not going to work as we want it, and I'm just going to explain like why it is not going to work and how we are going to resolve this issue. Okay, so if you see, this is a simple diagram of what we have as of now. Okay, so this is our app service. As I told you, we are just going to use one app service, and we are going to deploy both the container. So our API container is running in this particular app service, and our front end or web container is running. This is exposed over 3001, and the front end is exposed over port 80. Now the problem is when the app service run, it can only expose one particular port to the browser. Okay, and this is what happening when we run this Docker Compose. When we hit our app service URL, we can just get this web container and we can access it. But the problem is because the API is not exposed over the internet, and the way our application is working, when we call the web, it just gives us those HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to the browser, and then browser makes this request to the API to get the to-dos and all those things. Now the problem is because our port 3001 is not exposed outside the app service, and app service doesn't allow as of now to expose multiple port out of the app service. Okay, so what will happen, our application will load and we will only see the front end, and when you open a developer tool, you will see the backend API is not accessible. How we are going to resolve it? What we can do, there's a way we can make it work within the app service limitation where we can only expose port 80, and then it should just work. So what we will do, if we take this web, and what we are going to do, we will put something called proxy over here. So it's going to be the Nginx space proxy, and what it will do when we talk to our app service. So what we are going to do, we are going to talk to this proxy. Okay, and what this proxy will does, this proxy will internally talk to API as well as this particular front-end application. And we can configure it whatever the way we want. So what we can do it over here. So here we can just say whenever we put slash, it's just gonna go and talk to this particular web application and give us the front end. And what we are whenever we talk to API, we can do something called slash API slash, and what it do, it will just give us this particular API. So by using this, we are not exposing this 3001 or even this front-end application directly to the outside world. We will talk to this proxy. This is going to be the Nginx-based proxy. And then this proxy is going to talk internally to these two Docker containers and give us the result. Okay, so this is what we are going to achieve. Now, coming back to our application. So we have this API, and we are not gonna change anything within this container, okay? Because they are simply just talking to within the same URL scope. And one thing which I just modified is because now our APIs are gonna this is gonna be the root of our API slash API, and all of the endpoints will look like slash API slash whatever the thing which we were doing. And the good part is if I go into the React, I don't have to worry about the domain name. Previously, if you remember, we have put the domain name of other app service and everything that we don't have to do anymore. We can just say, hey, we are going to listen on slash API slash to-dos, and that's where our API endpoint is. So it's just going to be the single URL, and using that single URL, we are going to talk to both of our API as well as the front end. Okay, now in order to do that, we need to expose the proxy, right? So this is a simple Docker file. Okay, we are not doing anything. We are just, as I said, like we want, because app service listen to it can only expose the port 80. That's what we are going to do. We are just going to take this Nginx image. We are removing the default configuration. We are copying the configuration which we currently have. I'm going to go and explain what we wrote in the configuration, and then expose this port 80. Okay, that's it. Now coming to the configuration, what we are doing. So we are saying, hey, whenever, first of all, we are listening on port 80. That is what we wanted. And then we have two location map as of now. First is to handle the front-end React application. And what we are doing, we are saying, hey, whenever you receive something called slash without anything, you go ahead and call this front-end application on the port 80. And this is not any random name. If you go into the Docker Compose, this is what we are giving our service a name. So backend and frontend, and we can, if you are within that Docker network, you can just call each other APIs by using just their name. We don't have to remember the port and everything, whatever they're exposing. Okay, so what you're seeing, hey, whenever this particular location is coming, pass the request to this front end container, and we have this is other configuration related to the Nginx. And similarly, what we are doing here is, hey, whenever we have this slash API slash as a path, you forward the request to this particular backend container. And we specifically define 3001 because in the Docker of the API, if you see, we are exposing this 3001. Okay. And when we do this, we have a simple reverse proxy between our front end and back end application, and through that we can talk to both of our container. And now if I go and open this Docker Compose, you will see that what we are doing in the services, we have three services. I already talked about the front end and the back end services. Now we are adding one more service called Nginx. And similarly, we are going to just give the build as a slash proxy, and this is going to be the Docker file. And what will be the image name, which account it will be pushed and everything. And container name is just the proxy as of now. And this is a very interesting part. If you see, we are exposing the 80 port, 8080. So we are saying here, if you see in the backend and frontend, we are not exposing the ports. We are just saying expose this particular 3001, and we don't have a colon in between. So this, whatever the port we are exposing over here and here, this is just gonna expose internally. So that Nginx can talk to these two containers within this network boundary, but it will not be exposed to outside world. But when it comes to the Nginx reverse proxy server, what we are gonna do, we are gonna expose the port 80 on the outside as well, and we'll say internally we are listening on port 80. Okay, so this is what the Azure App Service, when it will boot up, it will start talking to this particular reverse proxy. And then what we see in the configuration, we are just going to forward this. If it is just a slash, we are going to forward it to the front end side of it. If it's just a slash API slash, we are going to forward it to the backend container. And here you see we just have a depends on. So unless and until we have these two containers up and running. So first we are going to just go and deploy the backend container, and then it will spin up the front end container. And then once these two containers are ready, it's just gonna spin up the Nginx container. Okay, so this the beauty of all this, we can run it locally as well. So if we just want to, let me just get out of this folder. What we can do, we can just say Docker. Let me see if we are running anything. I'll just close it down. We don't want anything. I'll just delete whatever the existing containers we have. And here I can just do a Docker compose up. And what it's gonna do, it's gonna take all of these services, this container and everything, and it's gonna make it up and running. And we'll see in the Docker desktop application how it looks like. So you see, because I already have the image locally, it went really fast. It doesn't have to pull any images or build any image. So if we go into the container now, we can see that we have this React Express as the name of our Docker Compose file. And then we have these three containers running. One is this backend Express, the front-end React. And you see in the port, we are not exposing any port over here. We just expose the proxy port. So if I just click on this URL, what it's gonna do, or we can just go to localhost. You see, our application is up and running, and we are getting that default to do which we have in our API, which is coming. And what I can do, I can add this hello from local, and this should get added to our API. And how we can access our API? We can just go to slash API slash todos, and you will see like we have this two to-dos, which one which was default and other one which I just created right now. So with this, we are only exposing a single URL, and we are able to talk to both of our front end application as well as our backend application. Okay, so this is great. We are up and running locally. Now let's see how we can take this and deploy it to the Azure. And what I have done as a prerequisite of this particular tutorial is I already published these three images to my Docker Hub. Okay, so if I go to my Docker Hub, you can see these three images are already there. So when we deploy to App Service, App Service is gonna pull these images from this Docker Hub by default because we don't have any private registry or anything. And we are gonna when we are gonna set up that App Service, we are gonna ask App Service to pull the images from the Docker Hub. And you see, I have both the backend, frontend, and the proxy images pushed to my public Docker Hub. If you're running this tutorial, you can use this same image and you can pull it. Okay. So now what we are going to do, we don't need to commit anything for this tutorial. We can just take this particular Docker Compose and we can deploy it in App Service. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'll come to my Azure portal and I'm going to say create a new web app. And I'm going to deploy, I already have one app service plan. And as we know, we can deploy multiple application in a single app service plan. And that's what we are going to do. Okay. I think that app service plan is running over here. I can do to do Docker. I can just put bunch of numbers so that it will be unique. And we don't need unique host name because this is already unique. And what we have to do is, you see, whenever you create a app service in Azure portal, you get three options. So last time when we deployed, we selected code and we selected specific runtime and everything. Or we can do it as a static web app. But now what we are gonna do for this publish, we're just gonna say container. We're gonna do a Linux container, and then I already have one plan running in East Asia. And as soon as I select East Asia, it just gave me, hey, I have one B1 plan running on that particular region. And it's a very simple, basic one. We have one CPU and 1.75 GB of RAM. And I think that is sufficient for this very lightweight application. Okay, now what we have to do, we can skip the database part. We don't have any database. And now this is a very interesting part. Here we have to define uh, where we are gonna where app service is gonna pull all these containers. So what we are gonna do, first of all, we don't need any sidecar as of now. And for image source, we can just say Docker Hub or other registry. Here we have two options. Either we can run a single container or we can run a multiple containers with the help of Docker Compose. Keep in mind this is in preview, so if you are running a very advanced version of Docker Compose, there is a possibility some feature might work, might not work. So just check the official documentation before using this. And I'm just gonna say I have a Docker Hub, which is a public, so it doesn't need any authentication. And now what I can do, I have this, just gonna copy path, and we're just gonna select this particular Uh, okay, so yeah, it is already been running. I can just select this Docker Compose. And you see, we have our Docker Compose and we can see all three services. One is Nginx based reverse proxy and the front end and backend container. And we can just, we can keep everything the way it is. We don't need any monitor everything as of now. We can just go and review and create. Okay, we can skip tags. We can just go and review and create. I think everything looks great. Let's go and click on create. It's just gonna do the validation and it might take again a couple of minutes or seconds to app service to get this fully up and running. So as we can see, the app service deployment is completed. And what I will do, I'll click on this particular, just click on go to resource. It will open this to do Docker 54, what we have created. And what you can do, you can click on logs and then you can go and you can see the streaming logs. So what it will do, it will show you when whenever we run this Docker Compose locally, we see all this log. Okay, it just pulling all these services and everything. So I think it is not running. Let me give it one more shot. Okay, it's connected, but I think we don't have any log. Let me just see what is the status, if you're able to access the application or not. It takes few minutes because what it does internally, it started pulling all these images from our Docker profile, wherever we have set up all this thing, and then it just make all these containers up and running. So it might take couple of minutes to just fully get everything up and running. So here we can see we have our application up and running. We see we can access our API as well. And if I just click on slash API slash todos, we should see our services running, and then we can just we can put our todos, and we can mark our todos, and then we can again go and see in our API, and you can see like both of these things are running as expected. And I think we can give it one more shot, and if we see if we are able to connect to this log stream or not. Yeah, as you can see, we are connected to this log stream, and you will see like whatever you do. And when the first time when you connect to this log stream, you will see this Docker image up and running. And if you face any issue, you can come here and you can see if something is not working as expected. So yeah, this is what we have for today. So just to summarize what we have done, we took our front end and back end application, we containerized it, and we deployed to Azure App Service using Docker Compose. And in order to solve the issue of single port, what we have done, we kind of just put a simple proxy in between of these two container, and our browser is talking to this proxy, and these proxies are routing the request to both of these containers. Thank you so much, and have a great day.